The morning sun of Cathera Prime cast long shadows across the parade ground, painting the crimson sand in shades of amber and gold. Instructor Vekaral stood at attention, his forearms crossed in the traditional posture of the Catharan military elite. Before him 24 cubs shuffled and fidgeted, their tails swishing with youthful energy that no amount of drilling could fully contain. Formation. Vekaral's voice cracked like thunder across the field. The cubs scrambled into lines, though several still whispered among themselves, and young Miras continued to scratch behind his ear with a hind leg. Vekaral's mandibles clicked in frustration. 3 cycles he had trained these cubs, and still they lacked the discipline that war demanded. The Catharan Empire had conquered 17 systems with their ferocity and tactical brilliance. But these younglings tested even his legendary patience. "You disgrace your bloodlines," he growled, stalking between the uneven rows. "The enemy will not wait for you to stop your chattering." The void shows no mercy to the he stopped mid-sentence. Every cub had gone rigid. Not the forced stillness of recruits trying to avoid punishment, but something else entirely, something instinctive. Their ears stood perfectly erect, their tails motionless as stone, their eyes fixed forward with an intensity Vekaral had never witnessed in beings so young. Then he heard it, the soft crunch of boots on sand. Vekaral turned, and his primary heart skipped a beat. Captain Arlen walked across the parade ground. The human moved with unhurried purpose, his uniform crisp despite the planet's heat. His stride neither rushed nor leisurely. He carried no weapon, wore no crown, displayed no aggressive posture. Yet something in the way he moved made the very air seem heavier, more serious. Tovrin, the eldest cub and Vekaral's most promising student, stood at the front of the formation. The young Catharan's eyes tracked Captain Arlen's approach with laser focus. Without turning his head, without making a sound, Tovrin straightened further, if such a thing were even possible. His shoulders pulled back, his spine aligned perfectly. His breathing became controlled and measured. The other cubs followed instantly, unconsciously, as if Tovrin's posture were a gravitational force they couldn't resist. Captain Arlen hadn't looked at them, hadn't spoken, hadn't acknowledged their existence in any way. He was simply walking toward the command building, likely to meet with War Marshal Threknor about the joint operation in the Outer Reach, yet the entire formation had transformed. Vekaral felt it too, that strange pull that humans carried with them. He had served alongside the Terrans for 2 standard years now, ever since the Alliance Treaty had been signed. In that time, he had witnessed things that defied his understanding of warfare and leadership. He remembered the Battle of Kromesh Station, where Captain Arlen had held a corridor against Vrek's shock troops for 11 hours straight. Not because he was the strongest, Catharans were far more powerful. Not because he was the fastest, the Silithine were quicker, but because something in his eyes promised that he would not break, could not break, and that promise had spread through the defenders like fire through dry grass. Humans called it leading by example, but it was more than that. It was a weight, a presence, an unspoken contract written in body language and bearing that said, "I will not ask you to do what I would not do myself. I will not command respect, I will earn it." Captain Arlen passed within 20 meters of the formation. His eyes briefly flickered toward the cubs and the corners of his mouth moved, not quite a smile but an acknowledgement. A nod so slight it might have been imagination. Tovrin's chest swelled with pride. His claws dug into the sand, anchoring himself even more firmly. The human continued on his way, disappearing into the shadow of the command building. Yet the cubs remained at attention, not daring to move, as if breaking formation now would be a betrayal of something sacred. Vekaral found his voice. At ease. The cubs relaxed, but their demeanor had changed. Miras wasn't scratching anymore. The whispers had ceased. They looked at their instructor with new eyes, eyes that asked, "Can we become that? Can we carry ourselves with such purpose?" "Instructor?" Tovrin's voice was respectful, curious. "Why did we do that?" "He didn't command us." Vekaral's mandibles clicked softly, a sound of contemplation. How did one explain humans to younglings? How did one describe a species that had clawed its way from the bottom of their planet's food chain to the stars? Not through superior strength or speed, but through sheer, stubborn determination. Because, young Tovrin, humans do not command respect through fear or force of arms alone. They embody it. Captain Arlen has walked through fire, has stood when others fell, has made decisions that would break lesser beings, and he carries all of that in how he moves, how he stands, how he exists in the world. Vechrel moved to the front of the formation, his voice taking on a teaching tone. You have all heard the stories of old Earth, yes? How humans were prey animals once, hunted by creatures stronger and faster than themselves. How they had no natural weapons, no armored hide, no venomous bite. The cubs nodded eagerly. Yet they survived. They thrived. And do you know why? Vechrel paused, letting the question hang in the air. Because they learned to lead each other. A single human is formidable. But humans together, united by shared purpose and mutual respect, they become unstoppable. And that unity begins with beings like Captain Arlen, those who show others what is possible, simply by being what they themselves demand. Tovrin's tail swished once, thoughtfully. So we straightened because we wanted to honor him? No, Vechrel corrected gently. You straightened because some part of you, the part that recognizes true warriors, understood that in his presence, anything less than your best would be an insult to yourself. He didn't command you. He inspired you. The parade ground fell silent except for the whisper of wind across sand. Again, Vechrel said quietly, Formation. This time the cubs moved with purpose. Their lines were crisp, their postures perfect, their eyes forward. They weren't following orders anymore. They were following an example. From his office window in the command building, Captain Arlen glanced down at the parade ground. He saw the cubs standing at attention with a precision they hadn't shown moments before. Saw old Vechrel nodding with approval. Saw young Tovrin standing tall and proud. Arlen allowed himself a small smile. Leadership, he had learned long ago, wasn't about being the loudest voice or the biggest presence. It was about being the standard others chose to measure themselves against. He turned from the window and got back to work. There were reports to file, missions to plan, and lives depending on his decisions. Just another day of being human.